In honor of their fourth studio album Puppy coming in June, I thought it'd be fun to take a look back at the 3 albums that made Brockhampton famous. In June, August, and December of 2017, the greatest boy band in the world dropped Saturation 1, 2, and 3. By putting out 48 tracks within the span of a year, the boys literally saturated the market. As a huge Brockhampton fan and somebody who loves to rank things, this video is going to be running through each song on the Saturation Trilogy and trying to determine which are the best of the bunch. However, I wanted to make things a little more interesting than just to give you my definitive list of favorites. I know I'm biased for certain songs, so I thought we'd get a little deeper than just my opinions. So, to hereby create the nerdiest video in all of Brockhampton standom, we're going to be using a little bit of math. Here's the formula I use to get each song's total score. Basically, it works like this. First, I gave each song my ranking 1 out of 10, with 10 being a perfect score. That accounts for 70% of the total score. The other 30% was me scouring any data I could find about the popularity of each song. I looked on streaming services, Reddit threads, blogs, tweets, and whatever I could find, and gave each song a 1 out of 10 score for popularity with fans, 10 being the most popular song. And then, just for good measure, there's one more piece to the puzzle. I scoured through a list of every set list from Brockhampton's tours, and each song that they perform at least somewhat regularly will get an additional 0.5 points. That way the band even has some input of what goes into these scores. Obviously they wouldn't be performing the material that they thought was weaker than their other stuff. So as an example, if I gave a song a score of 7 out of 10, I'd multiply that by 0.7, then if I got a popularity score of 9, I'd multiply that by 0.3, then let's say it was performed at most of their live shows. It would get an extra 0.5 points. Add up those 3 numbers and you get its total score. Just as a fun little game, I'll give you the hint that 3 songs scored higher than a 10. Pause the video and drop a comment to see if you can guess which songs they are. Something important to know before you comment with a bunch of anger, I don't even agree with some of these rankings because they're not entirely mine. And a lot of the scores might seem low and pretty hateful to the group, but that's due to some of the weights of the popularity being so low. A super unpopular song will get a score of a 2 or a 3, thereby taking its total score down. I'm going to play a snippet of each song, give you my thoughts, and keep on moving down the list. First off, we have to get the skits out of the way. For these, I grouped them up so all the skits on an album account for 1 ranking. In last place, we have skit 1, 2, and 3 from Saturation 1. They're just kind of awkward. I don't think musically they help transition into the other songs well.
Padre, gracias por mi familia. Te pido que los bendigas con tu favor. Provéeles sus necesidades.
Next, we have scene 1 and 2 from Saturation 2. These get a little bit better, they make things get a little intense for a second. I specifically like the transition from scene 2 to fight.
Padre Celestial, soy tu humilde servidor. Me presento en necesidad de esperanza.
And rounding out the skits, we have Cinema 1, 2, and 3 from Saturation 3. I'll never skip these when I'm listening to the album. They each set a slightly unique mood, and the boys put visible effort into making these proper transitional tracks. I love Cinema 1 into Stupid and Cinema 2 into Sister Nation. With the skits out of the way, we have our last place finisher for actual tracks, Bank. I don't hate this song, but it's kind of a mess in my opinion. Too much going on without any of it being too enjoyable for me. Next we have Tupac. This is more of an interlude than anything, being that it's barely over a minute long. I don't mind this song at all, Amir has a decent verse, but I'd never think to put it on.
I was playing rock, paper, scissors with imaginary friends. Imagine having no friends. I was playing rock, paper.
This is where it starts to get kind of funny because I don't dislike Liquid at all. Brockhampton just has so much material that's superior. There's some cool interplay between a lot of members here. Again, it's also very short. Cash is interesting because I really like half of it and don't like the other half. the half I like being the verses, specifically Merlin's, and the half I don't like being the annoying hooks and bridge. Sunny's just a little forgettable in my eyes. It serves as a sort of outro from the rappers of Brockhampton on Saturation 2. It's a little sleepy. I love Kevin's bridge though. Trip's another one of the forgotten tracks of Saturation 1. I think that album has a lot of their best and worst material with not a whole lot in between. I really like Amir's distorted verse on here though. Jesus sets a line in the sand for these rankings for me. All of the tracks before I don't really like that much, but every track from here on out I think is solid at the very least. This is a short song, but I like Kevin's verse and I love Bareface's outro. There's two pretty distinct halves to fight, the slightly strange old western beat at the front end and the cool explosive part at the back end. I think you can tell which one I prefer. Next is Swim, probably one of the better of those forgotten Saturation 1 tracks. Everybody puts on a good performance here, specifically Merlin and Dom. I don't love a lot of what's on Gamba, but I'm pretty easily swoon whenever Bareface has a light feature on a song. I think he's the glue that makes the song work as a whole.
I used to work for people. I made a couple $100, wasn't worth it even. I'm worth 100,000, not dollars but diamonds.
Here we have Alaska. There's some good, some bad on this track. Love Kevin's verse in the middle of the track, and I think it's one of his most underrated verses on the album, and Matt does a good job closing up.
I bet the marble feel good on your bare foot. I'm in the backyard hiding out like I'm Bigfoot. And now
here we have Chick. Again, I think this is another checkpoint for these rankings. Now everything, including this track, is at the very least good. Chick would be a top 10 song for a lot of rappers, not 29th. Love Amir's verse here.
Too many things I'd rather do different. Woke up in a cold sweat, my emotions creeping. 3 o'clock on the weekend, might as well sleep in. Stay down for the count.
Next we have Tokyo. Really cool tone and cadence from Joba, a great verse from Amir, and a really cool beat from Jabari and Ramil. Also notice that we've started hitting songs with a total score above 7.
I spent like a year and a half on a Greyhound bus on the way to see this girl. Take a flight back just to keep my job.
Stains is a really interesting conceptual track, the boys taking their criticisms head on. Love the appearance from Ashlyn, and Joba's outro is so good.
Low-key on my heart throb. When I ain't dropped an album yet, I'm something like a poster. Sitting on your girl's wall and something about my face.
Just missing out on the top 25, we have Boys. Kinda disappointed because I love this song, super underrated, and one of my favorite Matt Champion verses across the whole trilogy.
My life ain't been the same since my dog died, since my girl left. I quit drinking and drugging and still can't get ahead.
Now entering the top 25, we have Johnny. A lot of solid performances from everyone included, but the spotlight has to go to Joba. Super deep, emotional, and powerful verse.
Do I trust? I'm probably not. I think that you're probably fried. I think that my brain is fried.
Next we have Jello. The beat and chorus can sometimes make me feel like I'm going crazy, but I love a lot of the verses on here, specifically Matt and Amir's. Fake is definitely a hidden gem on Saturation 1. If we're gonna separate the most popular and least popular songs on that album, this would probably be the best of the least popular tracks. The "don't say that" parts make me laugh every single time.
I done been in trouble about as long as I remember. My mama tried to help me, but I hardly ever listened, so she sent me to them white.
I can't say enough about Teeth. Amir was probably my favorite member during the Saturation 1 era, so once 2 came and I heard this song, I was legitimately proud. It really gives him a spotlight and he proves himself.
Did
Just missing out on the top 20, but the first song to reach above an 8 on the total scores, we have Team. I don't really know how all you guys feel, but this track is super bittersweet to me. I just love Bareface having his individual closures to each album, so I didn't love the other members having verses. I do love the callback to Heat at the end, though.
You do not know me, don't speak of my homies. You are a phony, quit pinning shit on me. You gon' bring out the old me. You don't wanna know what I wanna do when you're...
Now the 20th spot goes to Swamp. Definitely one of the catchiest songs off the trilogy. Everybody has great verses. This is where my love of Joba really started. His verse shows how unique he is in the group. Also love Amir's too, though. Every song from here on out, including this one, is at the very least great in my eyes.
Pretty shirt, I'm maniacal, but what do I know? I don't know, all I know is what I see through my monocle.
Next up we have Zipper. Speaking of Joba, his contributions are great here. Matt has one of the most underrated verses. There's nothing funnier and more meta than a Tony Fantano shout out, and once Kevin's hook gets in your head, there's no chance of getting it out.
I gotta get better at being who I am.
Here's where I start having problems with the rankings that I helped create. I'm shocked that Milk scored this low. I think it's easily one of their best songs ever and should have bordered on the top 10 at least. The popularity score really took this one down, one of Kevin's best hooks and Merlin's best verses. Boogie is a song that I'd drop in favor of Milk, but I do still enjoy it. Honestly, it scored so high because it had one of the top popularity scores across the entire trilogy. It's a nice little we made it moment for the group, a crazy beat to match. I can't complain too much. Next up we have Bump, another track I kind of had to fight for to get so high up in the rankings. One of the most unique and experimental in the group's history. It's half heaven, half hell, and all around a great track. Queer's one of those tracks where it's consistently great across the board. Everybody has great verses, a good hard-hitting beat. It's not one of my all-time favorites. It didn't get perfect scores on popularity, so that's why its total score is great, but not amazing.
Boys wanna play with my cell phone, but I don't want nobody to see what's in it. Boys wanna play with...
Stupid's a song that I like a lot, but it surprised me in how high it scored, popularity-wise. I didn't realize that this is an all-time favorite song for a lot of Brockhampton's fan base. Definitely some solid verses, but I think the chorus is the most memorable part for a lot of people. For some reason, I've seen a lot of people divided on Hottie and its popularity, but I'm not really sure why. If we're gonna call Brockhampton a boy band, this is the song that really tells you why. Catchy beyond belief, good introspective verses, and an all-around great track. Now we're hitting songs that score 9 and above. I probably prefer Sister a lot more than Nation. It's Matt's best rapping verse in my eyes, Merlin's intro verse sets the mood, and an all-around great double track.
I'ma go in the Stella. I feel like Matthew McConaughey. I don't care for what they gotta say. Tony Perkins, how I dropped away. Jason Bourne with the headshot.
Now, this might be a controversial exclusion from the top 10. I don't love Star like a lot of other people do. I've seen Brockhampton live twice, and I've watched them perform Star probably around 10 times. I just don't really get it. It's a great song, but I don't think it's the best they can do. Now entering the top 10, we'll start off with Waste. This is a song that really only made it this far because of how high I scored it. It's my favorite of the 3 Bareface heavy tracks across the trilogy, and I think it's nearly perfect.
Cash don't last, my friends are around with me. Keep 'em in my bag, we grab the limousine. When the guns go pow, won't bother us.
At 9, we have one of the most popular songs on Saturation 2, Gummy. This has one of the best beats across the whole trilogy, one of Kevin's best verses, one of my favorites from Amir, and that crazy outro from Joba and Kevin.
spit my heart out, looking out for my best interest. He gave me good head, peeping out while the windows tinted. I speak in tongues and I arrive without a damn.
At 8, we have Junkie, another great track that's probably the quote-unquote most important in their discography. Kevin's verse about sexuality and hip-hop, and Matt's verse about abuse and rape culture really define this song. At 7, we have what will probably be a slightly controversial pick because it's one of my favorites of all time, Rental. A cool, memorable beat, good verse from Dom, but the true hero of the song, the one and only Matt Champion. Some might even call this his shining moment. At 6, we have the crowd favorite Bareface track, Summer. So memorable, so iconic for that moment in Brockhampton's history. Bareface brings such hard-hitting vocals and great overall production. That guitar is just dreamlike.
Tell me what you waiting for. I just wanna love you.
Now entering the top 5, we have Face, one of the earliest of Brockhampton's singles to really blow up. This is one of the more emotional tracks in the group's history. Obviously, Joba's chorus is the most memorable parts of this track, but something really cool is looking at the opening line of each member's verse. Each one leaves its own distinct mark. At number 4, we have the song that was probably the most influenced by my rating, Heat. I think this is a near perfect song, but it scored much lower than expected on the popularity rating. Nevertheless, the hardest hitting song in Brockhampton's history found its way near the top.
Strip down to my skin and my bones. I love huskies, but I feel like a wolf. In a pack, but I feel all alone. I'm scatterbrained, man.
Now breaking into the top 3 Brockhampton songs of all time, these all scored above a 10 on the total scores. First, we have Sweet, the most popular song off Saturation 2. This is the most fun I ever have listening to Brockhampton. Each member brings their own unique style, coming together for what's so close to perfect. Specifically, I have to single out Joba and Merlin for my favorite verses.
Swan dive down the 405. Land at the bottom of El Toro High with the precision of a cut from a Zorro knife. The boy spit like he made out of 409.
From the start, I thought it would be inevitable that it would come down to these final 2. In second place, we have Gold. This is probably the group's most popular song to date, and it's easy to see why. Such incredible verses from each member, Matt, Amir, Merlin, and Dom, all bringing their A game. Now for the song that scored the highest in all of the Saturation Trilogy, Bleach. It's the only song I gave a 10 out of 10 from the whole trilogy, and it's extremely popular as well. Amazing production from Jabari and Ramil, the heavenly feature from Ryan, perfect verses from each member of the group, and Bareface blessing the outro. This, in my opinion at least, is Brockhampton at their very best. Hey, thanks so much for watching this video. Remember to like and subscribe if you want more videos like this. If you want to follow my social media, the links are down below. You can also donate to my Patreon, help the show, and get some cool rewards if you click the link on the screen. And I sell merch at tpublic.com/user/alphomedia. Thanks for watching, and always forward.